Welcome to the webinar. If you're here for our Fear Foods webinar with Balance, you are in the right place. As everyone gets logged in, feel free to share in the chat where you're from, where you're located, where you're logging in from. We'd love to know. We're so glad to have you today. This is the Fear Foods webinar. Hello from New York, from Princeton. Love it. I'm up in New Hampshire. We've got a whole East Coast representation right now. We have someone from North Carolina joining us. Throughout the webinar, please feel free to share your questions in the Q&A or in the chat at the bottom of your screen. We'll also be taking some questions toward the end, so don't miss out on that opportunity. Welcome again. This is the Balance webinar, Haunted by Fear Foods, Navigating Stress Around Food. Thank you for taking the time to log on today. Just by tuning in, you are putting your energy toward learning about yourself, getting support that you or someone that you know may need. So we're so happy to have you here with us. I'm Alexandra. I'm a content creator here at Balance, and I will be moderating this webinar today. So I just wanted to tell you a bit about Balance. Balance is a premier eating disorder treatment facility that offers boutique outpatient treatment options using evidence-based practices to provide customized care that best fits you and your loved ones in recovery. Now I would like to introduce our staff for today. So joining us on this webinar is Natalie. Natalie is an intake coordinator here at Balance, and Julie. Julie is Balance's outreach and PR manager. And like I said, I'm Alexandra, a content creator. And as we move through today's presentation, feel free to share any thoughts or reactions or questions in the chat or the Q&A panel. And Natalie and Julie will be watching both of those and making sure that your questions are answered along the way. Plus, we have some time set aside at the end for questions as well. And now I would love to introduce our amazing host for today, Melainie Rogers, who is the founder and CEO of Balance, among many, many other things. Having both personally and professionally learned from her own experiences with an eating disorder, Melainie understands the complexities of the recovery journey and is dedicated to supporting others. Beyond running 3 amazing companies, Balance, Redefining Wellness, and Melainie Rogers Nutrition, she is a certified eating disorder registered dietitian and supervisor and official mentor through the International Association of Eating Disorder Professionals Connection, Outreach, and Mentoring Committee. So I will pass it over to Melainie now. Thank you so much for being here.
Alex, thank you for the lovely introduction, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. I hope you can hear me okay. Is the sound coming through okay, Alex? Wonderful. Really thrilled to be presenting on this topic, which came about because it's a heavily Googled point of interest for a lot of people, fear foods. And at this time of the year, as many of you may be feeling, with a lot of holidays and parties and a lot of things revolving around food, it can get to be quite a highly anxious time. So today on this topic, we're going to be covering several things that hopefully will resonate for you, as well as also giving you a little bit of some tools, perhaps some tips that you can carry with you through the holiday season. So firstly, we're going to be learning about what are fear foods, and why the labeling of foods as fear foods or healthy foods, bad foods, etc., why that can actually be harmful. We will have a look at understanding where these food rules come from, identifying a little bit about diet culture and influences there, meaning that this is a much bigger topic than just I have a problem around some foods. This is kind of a systemic piece that we're going to be bringing into today to have a look at as well. We would love to help you develop a more positive relationship with food, and we'll touch upon some of the strategies that we use here at Balance to help our clients develop a more neutral relationship with food. And of course, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions along the way, and no question is is, what do they call it? A silly question. There's no such thing as that. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions in the chat, and my amazing team here will lob those over to me as we go through our presentation today. So first of all, fear foods, why do they matter? So as we know, spooky season is here. I'm wearing kind of my Halloween-esque fall shirt here to connect with that. But spooky season's here, but it's not in the way that you think, in the sense that it's the holiday season that brings this stress around food and our bodies to, honestly, a yearly high. So with social and emotional, mental, physical, and familial pressures, what can happen when we're under a lot of stress is that stress can manifest itself through restricting or thinking, gosh, I need to lose X number of pounds before Thanksgiving because Aunt Mary's going to be there and she's going to comment on my body weight. Stressful, right? Also disordered eating, starting to skip meals or cut out carbs, or start to kind of eat and consume food in a way that isn't the most optimal for you and not supportive. And of course, that body image distress, which unfortunately for many of us never seems to go away or is always right there in the peripheral. So what are fear foods? Foods that a person experiences extreme fear, anxiety, shame, or even guilt around eating are what we call fear foods. Fear foods are often avoided for health reasons, but actually they're off limits more usually because of disordered eating that someone may be experiencing, or really just what we call false food morality, which means here in our society, we're told that if you eat healthy foods and you are healthy, somehow that means that you have a higher moral kind of value than if you're eating unhealthy foods. What I mean by that is that we conflate morality, being a good person, with eating good and healthy foods, or I'm a bad person because I'm eating so-called bad or unhealthy foods. And so we want to really kind of talk about that today, explore that, pull that apart, and really show that to be a real falsehood. Fear foods can also manifest as forbidden foods and food rules. So one way to gauge that for yourself is to think about your relationship with food and to think about, do I have a lot of food rules? If you do, that could mean that you are having a lot more anxiety around certain foods, which hopefully we can touch upon more today about some tips there. And then lastly, these are all based on inaccurate external messaging from diet culture, from society, etc. And it's not your knowledge of what feels good to you and what your body needs. So that's what we want to do. We want to disconnect from external messaging and reconnect with what feels good for our bodies. For example, a fear food for many could be Doritos, but for me, it's one of those foods that make me feel really good. I have a great relationship with my Doritos, and my Doritos are as an essential piece to my kind of overall eating and pleasure as is, you know, your so-called plant-based foods or whatever foods we're told that we should also be eating. So keep that in mind as far as pleasure foods as well. So what is the problem? The problem is that labeling foods in these ways, or fear foods, it can cause significant harm because the perceived value is placed on what you eat, which can then lead for some of us to an obsessive focus on eating the right thing, and thus giving this unrealistic moral value to food that we touched upon earlier. This is often unsustainable and can actually lead to kind of a dieting cycle where you're eating healthy foods for a while, then you fall off the wagon and go back into other foods that you may judge yourself for eating. And then that type of cycle we know can escalate over time, leading to a lot of exhaustion and burnout around this food-related piece. So
Mel,
how can, yep.
can I just jump in?
Go
We
ahead.
have some questions in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
We asked what the difference is between fear of specific foods and food rules versus avoidant restrictive food intake disorder.
Oh, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder is ARFID. And ARFID is actually a full-blown eating disorder, which is where people avoid certain foods because of sensory piece or a fear of an adverse reaction. So for example, some people with ARFID, they may have had a real scary incident where they vomited when they were eating a certain food. And now they're so afraid of vomiting, they avoid that food. So that food becomes an understandable fear food, but it's not about the calories and it is not about the health profile of that food. It's because of a specific event that took place. So ARFID is quite a different scenario to when we're talking today about fear foods. We're talking more under this kind of diet culture umbrella of this is healthy and this is unhealthy and these are bad foods because they're so-called unhealthy. Does that separate that out, Alex, a bit?
Yeah.
So that's a great prompt to the next slide, which is how can healthy be bad? So an interest in health and nutrition, all good, we love that, but it can become dangerous when it gets obsessive. And when we say obsessive, that means that you're spending a lot more of your day thinking about what should I be eating? What should I not be eating? Oh my goodness, I ate that for breakfast this morning. I had a croissant, for example, or a muffin. And now I feel terrible because I let myself eat that and that's an unhealthy food. So it's that kind of internal dialogue that we're talking about here when we talk about getting obsessive, getting distressing, and then becoming isolating because it can get to a point where you may avoid going out to certain restaurants with friends or family because the food there doesn't fit your categorization of so-called healthy food. So this all to say can result in what we call disordered eating, nutritional deficiencies, and other serious eating disorders, such as orthorexia, which is doesn't have a diagnostic code at the moment, but is so commonplace that we obviously have a term for it, which is basically just uber healthy eating to the point where it's so obsessive that it kind of takes over your life. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So when nutrition is harmful, how do we balance this? What is this? What am I really talking about here? We've got fear foods, and then we've got this other thing called orthorexia, which is kind of healthy eating gone awry. And really it's a balancing act. We've got this thing called perhaps positive nutrition, and I'll walk you through what that looks like, and then harmful nutrition. And hopefully these next two slides will give you a little bit more so-called food for thought, pardon the pun, to get a better sense of how we're describing these phenomena. So firstly, positive nutrition, what is that? I'm going to start at 1 o'clock here at the circle there. So it's health seeking through nutritious foods, all good. It's motivated by a desire to live a healthy life. Again, really good stuff here. Promotes a feeling of accomplishment and allows flexibility. So I want to really highlight that word flexibility. You feel good because you're taking care of yourself and you're eating regular meals, balanced meals. That's great. But if I were to say, hey, let's go and grab a croissant tomorrow for breakfast at one of my favorite little French cafes, that would allow flexibility for you to not think, oh, croissant, no, that's not in my healthy food range. So there's flexibility here. It allows for enjoyment of food as one of the many aspects of a balanced life, hence my Doritos, that's where they fit in this explanation. And it also provides and promotes the social interactions and relationships that are so important to us, particularly even now as we come out of COVID and wanting to really rejoin with family and friends, etc. Perhaps in a way that we haven't done for a couple of years. So again, social interactions are not limited by where we're going to be eating or what we're going to be eating. So those are just some examples of what we think about when we think about positive nutrition that really supports us and our health and well-being. So to contrast that then with harmful nutrition, again, I'm going to start at 1 o'clock here. It's when you seek health, but in fact, it deteriorates your health and it starts to impair functioning. So as you can see, there's harm being done, even though the goal is to be healthy. It's health seeking through excluding unacceptable foods and motivated by a need to manage anxiety as opposed to health. So anxiety is often a key driver here. Success depends upon adherence to food rules, and mistakes are unacceptable. So as you can see here, there are food rules, it's rigid, it's definitely not flexible. And there's a lot of stress that we are actually creating for ourselves because we're designating certain behaviors as unacceptable. And lastly here, or last two, we're viewing food as a source of fear and danger that must be controlled, and it causes isolation and interferes with relationships. Whereas, as you remember, the healthy nutrition is where we're enjoying relationships and socializing and eating, great food and meals with friends. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of the difference between the two and what we're trying to get at today. So fear foods, yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was going to hop in because we have a few more really good questions in the chat that I think relate to this. Marjorie and Mark asked, how do we counter the evidence that processed foods are in fact less healthy for us?
Absolutely, and we're going to touch upon that, but yeah, you know what, let me hold off on that, because if I start to explain that, we'll be covering it anyway. I love that question. Let's pin that for the moment. Anything else pertaining to those two slides, Alex, before I hopefully get to that?
I think you'll get to the other ones as well, so I'll wait on
Perfect.
those.
Stay tuned, people, and if I don't answer it, we'll definitely go back and ask you for more info. Navigating fear foods. So here we go. How do we change the narrative around food, which is exactly your question there? How do we shift the focus to authentic health and well-being? And how do we cultivate a positive relationship with food and our bodies? Really great questions. So many of our clients come in with these very, very questions. So first, I want to say it is not your fault that you may be finding yourself maybe obsessing, finding yourself spending a lot of time and energy around this stuff. I really want to point out to everyone, you've done nothing wrong. You're not the problem here. This is a product of diet culture. So society's role in kind of giving us a sense that there are foods that we should fear. And our society teaches us that body size and shape are equivalent to worth and moral value, right? So basically, how many people have put themselves on a scale in the morning, maybe this morning, looked at the number on the scale, depending upon that number, you've deemed today a good day or a bad day, and today I am good or I am not good based upon that number. This is a part of this whole kind of toxic diet culture. There's a constant pressure to earn or avoid food. So for example, some of our clients feel that they have to exercise for a certain amount before they're allowed or give themselves permission to have certain foods. With Thanksgiving coming up and Halloween, right? Maybe it's like, oh my goodness, all that candy, what am I going to do? I'm going to need to hit the gym really hard so that I can give myself permission to have any kind of Halloween festivities. And also there's pressure here to perfectly portion, follow strict dietary rules. And this gets more intense around the holidays, as we're saying. And then with family gatherings, with Aunt Mary and other people making body comments, weight comments, perhaps even judging what you put on your plate at certain gatherings, creating a lot of stress. So this also then brings into play, we've noticed a real shift in the kind of diet world, from diet culture to this health and wellness kind of communication style that we're seeing right now in social media and magazines, on the media. It's all about health and wellness, not dieting and weight loss. But what we find, unfortunately, is that seems to be just smoke and mirrors for the same stuff, which is dieting and losing weight. And some of the messaging is exactly the same. It's just coached under, so-called healthier terms. So there's a morality here that leads to increased fear and food rules. So wellness culture, unfortunately, is falsely prescribing virtue and value to certain foods and ways of eating while shaming others. And this correlation has permeated throughout our society, and it's become an expectation rather than an actual debunked theory that it once was. unfortunately, in fact, many of our our doctors, for example, and people in the medical field, even dietitians in our field are kind of prescribing to some of these this kind of virtuous talk as well, which can be very, very very confusing for the consumer. And the truth is that all foods have value. So going back to your question earlier about what about processed food? Processed food, my Doritos, have value to me. I eat in a way that I know that my body has certain requirements. I have a biological responsibility to my body. We all do. I know that if I eat Doritos every single day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and all my snacks, I'm going to feel like crap. So I don't do that. I did try that once when I was younger, but I felt really badly. So I know that I need to balance it out. And so by balancing out my food, and then I have my lovely Doritos, at night, as a snack, I'm so happy and my body's happy because it's balanced out. So it's one of those things where you listen to your body and you listen to your preferences. And it's also taking away, though, very importantly, the value judgment. And so no food has an influence on your morality. I'm not a bad person because I eat Doritos. In fact, as I said, Doritos make me happy. I think I'm probably a better person because I eat Doritos. But all jokes aside, you'll see here with this picture of pancakes, love pancakes. Again, if it's helpful to our people who are watching today, I love my pancakes, but I also know that if I have pancakes for breakfast, my blood sugars spike and crash and I feel crappy about an hour later. So if I have pancakes, I need to have some kind of ricotta cheese on the side or some yogurt just to kind of balance it out. That's one example of how we have our favorite foods and also kind of balance out how those foods are making our bodies feel without judging around calories and even the nutritional content. So what does this mean for you? Fear foods get in the way of life. So you may avoid certain foods or food groups. You've developed those food rules we touched upon. You may be avoiding certain foods altogether because maybe they don't feel safe to you. And there are foods that could cause you intense anxiety. If you are checking yes, yes, yes to any of these points, I will suggest that certain foods or food in general is taking up far more space in your life than it really needs to. For many of us, we think that that's just the way it is. That's the way we are supposed to be around food. That thinking is so common that we actually have a word for it. It's called normative discontent. We actually are so distressed and have so much body dissatisfaction and fear around foods that we don't even realize it's not natural to exist with all of that anxiety. And as we're stating here, you really don't have to live like that. You do deserve a peaceful relationship with food, and it is absolutely possible. Part of it certainly is kind of blocking out some of that messaging that we're getting from the culture around us. So let's talk about holiday fear mongering here and seasonal pressure. So as part of the reason why we wanted to do this presentation for you all today is because we see a tremendous spike in Google Trends for eating more during winter and fear foods. And people do actually eat more during the winter months. It is a reality. So for example, many of us biologically in the summer months where it's hot and we're kind of thirsty and sticky, we don't want heavy meals. We tend to go and choose lighter meals and more high water content foods. And that's a natural part of this, listening to your body and eating according to what your body is telling you you need. But then come winter, I mean, already I've got, kind of a chili going, I've got my soups going, those kind of heartier foods that we are naturally drawn to during the winter because our body needs more fuel for heat production to keep us warm. And it's naturally kind of what our bodies are telling us that we need. So following those natural rhythms is a great and important piece of being in tune with your body, as opposed to having rules about what I should and shouldn't be eating. Eating more, therefore, isn't bad, no matter how much we're Googling and whatever we're reading is telling us that we shouldn't be doing these things. So this holiday season, I want to kind of give you some hope here that this holiday season really could be different. It doesn't have to be that way. So as we know, holidays amplify stress. We've talked about that. And really our goal today is to give you some tips to be able to maybe start to decrease or even stop this pattern of stress and fear before it really starts to escalate for you. So our suggestion is, instead of jumping on the no candy on Halloween or New Year, New You bandwagon, it is a perfect time really to start to think about your relationship with food, invest in yourself, and maybe start to take steps where you're healing that relationship with food in your body in a more sustainable way that will help you to endure seasonal changes without going through this annual cycle. So what do you do then? How do we approach this? So first and foremost, we absolutely do recommend, of course, you don't have to do this on your own. Having a coach or, maybe a person from Balance who can support you, someone who can give you some expert guidance to help you enjoy the holidays without feeling stressed, anxious, or triggered about food. And then treating fear foods, what we do with our treatment is we try to reintegrate all foods into a food plan, but we do it gradually over time. It's actually, there's actually a term for it, exposure therapy. I know that sounds heavy, but I want to emphasize that term because there is a real methodology to it. And it does require a step-by-step approach, as opposed to just kind of opening the floodgates for yourself and saying, okay, I'm going to just allow myself to eat everything and anything. That can feel a little overwhelming and can be triggering for some people. So we start off with an idea that all foods do fit, as we said, and viewing food as neutral. And then from there, we go into a step-by-step methodology. So when do you seek support though? When do you get a sense of, oh, hang on, I don't know if I can do this on my own. And when I do try to do this for myself, I end up getting triggered and maybe overeating and feeling worse about myself. So I just want to say there's no wrong time to reach out. And if any of this information today resonates, certainly you're absolutely, please reach out, because you're absolutely worthy of support. A clear sign that you may need support is if you feel your relationship with food interferes with your life, health, occupation, or relationships. A great litmus test question that I ask a lot of our clients is to ask yourself, how much of your day do you spend thinking about food, calories, weight, exercise? And I'm just going to pause there and ask people to maybe just do a mental check-in with yourself about how much of your day are these kind of thoughts on your mind. And we see with a lot of our clients, we're seeing that up to 50% of their day plus people are thinking about food and calories and exercise and the weight on the scale. And you think about, like, in a day, your bandwidth where you're trying to do school and do work and your professional life and build your life and relationships and friends. And then to have 50% of your thoughts consumed with this stuff, that's pretty detrimental. And in my personal and professional opinion, it's taken up way too much space. This stuff doesn't deserve that. So, overcoming fear foods. What do we focus on when challenging fear foods? How do we do that? First and foremost, know what's true, permit yourself to enjoy, adjust your language, which means what we're literally naming things, and also the narrative we're having in our own minds, and set boundaries for yourself. So first of all, know what's true. Food fears and myths that cause real harm. Okay, so this is just a smattering. Some of these may resonate with some people. Some of these may actually aggravate some people. I'm not sure, depending upon what might be going on for you. But some common things that we hear from our clients are, carbs are bad, all sugar is addictive, including sugar that's in, fruits and fruit juice. I won't stop if I eat junk food, I'll get out of control, which I totally understand that. Intermittent fasting will make me healthier. And for some people, in honesty, intermittent fasting has been helpful because it's given them kind of some restrictions around when they're eating. But anything that's interfering with your natural hunger and fullness cues is actually disconnecting you from your body, not reconnecting you with your internal cues. So we have to be a little bit careful there. And then, of course, other things around gluten. Anything with gluten is bad, even if you don't have sensitivities. A lot of these things are messaging that we're told or hinted at, or we see over and over to a point where we internalize them and we start to think that I should be following those rules as well. But it's absolutely not the case. So again, we need to begin to determine what's true for you and what meaning are we giving to food and certain food rules. So again, the Doritos example, permit yourself to enjoy food and find joy in your own experiences. So embracing the all foods fit model and letting go of that judgment is a very, very important step towards being able to neutralize food. Restriction, we know, can lead to a loss of control and high stress. So actually what we see when people are dieting or limiting food is there is a restriction followed by a physiological overeating pattern. And then that can end up in kind of a yo-yo dieting cycle or a restriction binge cycle. And so legalizing foods is one way to kind of get you off that merry-go-round, and having a professional to guide you through can also offer enormous support and reduce the stress of trying to figure this out on your own. What we do for our clients, as I said, the methodology is we start off with legalizing all foods fit, and then we work towards your own hierarchy of fear foods. So we have our clients actually rank certain foods from their lowest risk fear foods right through to their highest risk fear foods. And then what we do is step by step, we start with a lower risk fear food, and we have our clients try to reintroduce that food in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming or out of control or doesn't trigger them. And so this is part of that so-called exposure therapy that I mentioned earlier, a step-by-step methodology to gradually reintroduce some of these scary foods, to realize the ultimate end goal is that we realize at the end that these foods are actually not hurting us. It's the fear around the foods that's causing all the stress. And again, it is about balance. So setting boundaries for yourself. It is not uncommon for people to project their food and body struggles onto others. We see this so much. And again, as we're going to the holiday season, we're seeing a lot of friends and family, maybe people we haven't seen for a while. And there's often a lot of conversation around food and weight loss, and I'm doing this and I can't have that. And oh, look at that apple pie, it looks amazing. Too bad I can't have any today. And honestly, when I hear that conversation, sorry to be judgmental, but I just think, oh my God, so boring. Let's talk about something far more interesting than all this sort of stuff. Let's just move beyond it. And so for yourself to be able to set boundaries that help you feel safe and promote your own healing, here are just some tips that we have. Number one, when someone gets into that space and you don't want to participate, politely smile, walk away. Know that you can do that. Change the topic. Or if it's someone that you trust, you can share honestly about what your own journey is, where you are, or elect a support person. Take someone who's supportive with you to one of these more stressful family or friend gatherings, or maybe it's an office end of year party or some such thing. Bring someone along that can kind of help you to take some deep breaths, get away from the diet and judgmental talk around food calories and body weight and image. I will say these can be helpful, but also know it's a journey. And I do also totally validate those of you who are saying, oh my God, yes, but it's still so hard. I just want to say, yes, it is still so hard, but taking some of these initial first steps will make you feel better in the moment. Let's talk about the language we use here. So how we talk about food really does matter. And again, this is something that it's so common to hear people judging food that it's accepted as normal. but it doesn't have to be. Words like junk, crap, bad, etc. carry very negative connotations, and they also add to, in a very kind of covert way, this shameful or guilty association with food. This stuff, we do internalize it, and it does start to affect us. So by changing the way you speak about foods, you can change the way you think about them. So it's really kind of starting to think about, what's my own internal narrative here? So terms to use instead: play foods, fun foods, satiating foods, high convenience foods, ready packaged foods, whatever you like. Again, my Doritos I call an essential part of my well-being, is how I refer to them. And for me, they are. So replacing fear with freedom, what is that about really? So freedom instead of fear, I know it sounds like kind of a pipe dream, but with all sincerity, we do see our clients move into a place of greater freedom with food. An example, we had clients who were terrified of burgers and fries. We did some exposure therapy, and then our clients were able to come back the next week and say, you know what? I was able to go out with friends to Shake Shack this weekend and not have a meltdown, and actually enjoy it and enjoy being with them instead of being all in my head about what we were eating. And it was actually, liberating. That's the kind of stuff we're shooting for here. So above all, you truly do deserve to feel at ease around food. It is possible, with the freedom to enjoy the holiday season, and that is certainly what we hope for you. So I just want to say, we can certainly help. We have fully licensed master's level clinicians who can walk you through your food fears, because these really do affect our mental, physical, and emotional health. And our teams incorporate evidence-based treatment into our program. That's really important, because I will say there's a lot of wellness coaches out there I've seen on the internet who are promoting what they do around food, and a lot of it unfortunately is not evidence-based, and a lot of it honestly is more of just diet culture with different phrasing. So you really want to be looking for evidence-based practices, such as health at every size, which is the idea of kind of, no matter where we are, no matter our start point, we can be healthier by taking some of these steps. And the All Foods Fit model, as we have spoken about today, we want to help you grow your resilience and then set goals that are sustainable for kind of lifelong freedom, lifelong recovery. Fear and anxiety around food is normal, absolutely, but that doesn't make it right. And so we really want to promote that idea that it is possible to develop a peaceful relationship with all foods, and we're really passionate about helping you to achieve that. So I wanted to leave some time for some questions, and also wanted to highlight some resources that we've handpicked for you here, because a big part of the whole fear food and the messaging we get is often from social media. Social media, there are so many great things about social media. I'm sure we can all say that. There are also some messaging that can add and play along with this negative narrative around food and food judgment and food rules. So we've handpicked some really terrific, more positive food relationship handles and platforms and influencers, including our own, with @Melainie Rogers Nutrition and @Redefining Wellness, where you can get some more of this more neutral or more positive messaging around food and relationship with food. So I'm hoping that might be helpful for you. I'm going to leave that slide up for the moment and take some Q&A. And then when we wrap up, I'll also talk to you about some of our groups. Go ahead, Alex, with any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It was full of such useful information, and yeah, it was really great. You answered as you went along some of the questions we have, but we do have a great question here from Sarah. How does one navigate fear foods when dietary restrictions may be important for health or moral reasons? For instance, being gluten-free due to intolerance or veganism for animal rights.
Absolutely. And that's a terrific question. So if someone is, so this is where it gets tricky, because we have clients who come in who have gluten sensitivity or have celiac and need to avoid gluten. So that's when we would develop a plan for them where there isn't gluten in their food plan, but that doesn't mean that we therefore avoid all carbs. So we would make sure that there is gluten-free bread if they like that, or gluten-free pasta if a client likes pasta. So we would find substitutions rather than elimination of a whole food group. So that's how we would work with that to keep it balanced. So that's a difference between I can't eat gluten because for medical reasons, I'm not allowed to, and a lot of our clients grieve that process, but we try and provide really great substitutions for them so that there's not a deprivation piece to it. For some of our vegan clients, and we have a number of clients who are following a vegan lifestyle for animal rights and ethical reasons, and we fully support that. And again, it comes down to balance. So it's the motivation, I think, around why you're choosing to eat some foods over others. And hopefully the motivation isn't fear and isn't about calories, because you'll notice that for a lot of our clients around fear foods, it often is calories, and it's often because we've been told that that is junk food. So again, even with our vegan clients, we encourage them to embrace, vegan ice cream or vegan cookies, or, Oreos are actually vegan, for example. So again, it's about this balance and having some of these fun foods that are part of our culture, whatever your culture is. We all have our own kind of different preferences. But again, it's important to be able to sprinkle those in rather than completely avoid them, because that's when I think we start to get obsessive. And that's when the healthy starts to get to that place where it starts to become unhealthy, because it's very rigid, too many rules. I hope that makes sense, where we're looking for flexibility there.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. We just had another question come in. Kaylee asked, with the holidays coming up, what is an easy way to talk to a significant other about your eating disorder and recovery if that topic hasn't come up in conversation yet? I don't want it to be a big deal, but more so just letting them know you may feel a bit anxious.
Yeah. So in other words, the person who's writing the question, they've got anxiety around their own eating disorder. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's a tricky time, isn't it? So I would say what we encourage to our clients is be careful who you disclose to. What I mean by that is people you disclose to should be people that you can trust and that you feel safe with. So not everyone deserves to know what your journey is. And I say that because if you're going to be judged or criticized by someone that you may share with, that's not a person who deserves to know what you're going through. So I just say that because from a mental health perspective, it's really important to protect ourselves. And you're going through something right now that I have to say, I applaud you as you're going through and taking steps, it sounds, towards your own recovery. And so that's something really to be protected. So, if I'm using Aunt Mary, but it could be Uncle John or whomever, if there are people around you that are hypercritical, maybe just going to the couple of select people that you would like them to know that you're maybe struggling, or there's some things that you need to have in place to keep the event safer for you, just go and tell those people. And the rest of them, just smile and nod and politely, excuse yourself is what I would do there, or bring a support person. Yeah, so, it's a really interesting topic because it is about boundaries. And many of us, what I will say is many of us were raised not knowing the difference between a secret and something that is personal. And we were also told that if we didn't share things with family, we were keeping secrets. But I want to really redefine that and say that our own personal journeys and our own life is our personal information. And it's not a secret if we choose to keep it to ourselves. Secrets are usually about shame. So, but if it's something that we choose to keep to ourselves and not share with certain people because honestly, we don't trust that they won't be judgmental, then that's not keeping a secret. That's protecting yourself and having a boundary. I hope that's helpful, particularly around family. Go ahead. Any other questions there, Alex?
Yeah, we have two more. One is, can you provide some coping mechanisms to de-stress people with eating disorders on festive days, such as Christmas or Thanksgiving, with the pressure when the pressure of eating is high?
Yeah, when the pressure of eating is high. So I always say going with a plan. I know it takes extra work, but it's so important. Have a plan. And so some key pieces of having a plan could be, well, first and foremost, make sure you eat consistently throughout the day. A lot of people, for example, with Thanksgiving or even Halloween, and certainly some, excuse me, Christmas, etc., a lot of people restrict all day and then go into the main event starving hungry. You set yourself up in that scenario to overeat or feel more out of control around some of your choices, and then you feel really bad about yourself later, is often the cycle. So don't skip breakfast and have maybe a smaller lunch if you're having kind of a 3 o'clock gathering, for example, but don't go into it starving hungry. Go into it hungry, but just not starving. So that's what I mean when I say plan ahead. Maybe again, you could plan ahead to understand or know if you need to, depending upon where you are in your stage um, of being able to eat certain foods. You may want to know what the menu is, make sure there's some key items there that you can eat without stressing about that. Offer to bring something if you're going to someone's home so that you know you've got some safe foods there. And because it's already stressful, it's not necessarily a great time on those days to try one of your fear foods, unless you want to, of course. It may be a day to just eat some of your safer foods because there's so much else going on that day that is stressful already, and leave the fear food challenges to another day. And then a couple of other things I would say is have someone you can text, take a break, like just go for a walk if you need a bit of peace and quiet, or just excuse yourself and find a room where you can just take a few breaths and have a little bit of quiet time away from all the hustle bustle. So in other words, break it up a little bit for yourself, pace yourself. And music is great. Maybe a quick meditation, on your phone. Just go into another room and do a 5-minute deep breathing meditation. Anything that's going to bring your stress level back down. And you may need to have those little kind of sprinkled in throughout the day. Those are just a couple of tips to get you through the day, and have an exit plan. If it gets too much, call an Uber, jump on the train, or head back home. And
Yeah.
good luck. because it's hard. It's even for I have had my own lived experience. Many of our clients, as they go through recovery, they're able to navigate the holidays far better than when they were really in their eating disorders. But it's still hard, and there's still going to be people that trigger you and annoy you, and there's going to be things that happen. And so just to kind of know that going in, that it's going to be a heightened situation, even though we're all told, oh, this is the happy time of the season, a lot of people actually have a really hard time through the holidays. So most importantly, prioritize you and take care of your mental health, so that you can show up and be a part of it in a far more engaged way.
Yeah, that's great advice. One more question. We just have time for one more. What would you say to a child who has already absorbed the message that food is bad because it's a fatty food?
Oof, I know. I would, depending upon what the food is and if you like it, I would gently suggest that it is important for us to still enjoy certain foods. So, for example, Halloween is right around the corner. I hope this is not triggering for people, but, in celebration of that with my neighbors and my own, I have a 9-year-old who's very excited about Halloween. So I had her list what her favorite candy is, what does she think we should purchase. We've purchased that. And we're going to eat some of that together and enjoy it. And so I would encourage you to, if it feels appropriate, to maybe go out and buy that particular food and sit down and eat it with that child. Or maybe you eat it and just say, I know that we're told that this is fatty, but and part of eating and enjoying our food is having all sorts of food in our life, including our ice cream or including this. And if they enjoy it, to be able to have it on occasion when they feel like it. So, and here's just another thing I'll say about Halloween. As a nutritionist and a mother, and fully promoting and absolutely embracing all foods fit, and this idea around satiety with food, I was curious to see how my kiddo would do around Halloween. I'm Australian, so I never grew up with bags of candy to this degree. And I was very curious to see how she would handle it. And what I observed is when I just let her do her thing, and I've spoken to many, many parents around this, because I don't restrict what she has access to, and everything's kind of balanced in the way that we've been talking about very intentionally. When my daughter grabs all this candy, initially she's like, oh, mummy, I want to taste this. I want to taste that. I want to taste this. And what I discovered is that she unwraps a whole lot of different things, sticks a few of them in her mouth, has a taste, spits some out. And then I kid you not, this big bag of candy is then left on the table. I leave it there for a couple of weeks. She might nibble a little bit more over a few days, and she's so done and she forgets all about it. So in other words, the fear as a parent that my kid is just going to eat this massive bag of candy, I think many of us have that. And it is a time where kids are going to eat more candy than they would normally because it's all there. But there is a satiety piece that kicks in. And if we try and restrict it and limit it, what we notice is kids start to sneak candy. And that's definitely where shame starts to come in, and labeling and judgment. So the way to neutralize that is to say, hey, let's have some of this candy together. Is what I would encourage. Again, everything is very much individual based upon your relationship. So I don't want to say that that's necessarily going to work for you all, but give it a try, see how it goes. And if you need more support, we're absolutely here to support you.
If we want to go to the next slide or two, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie. Just to explain a little bit about some of the treatment programs here at Balance, if anyone is looking for more support.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alex. So we're an outpatient treatment center specializing in eating disorders. And we offer our highest level of care. The most intensive is going to be the PHP, or partial hospitalization program. That's more of a full day program. And then we have an IOP, which is intensive outpatient program. We have a Saturday program, as well as outpatient groups and individual programs as well, nutrition counseling, as well as meal supports. And we offer virtual and in-person options.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you all for coming to this awesome webinar. Thank you, Mel, for the amazing information that you've given all of us today. I just wanted to make sure that everyone has the information that they need. So if you would like to continue learning about recovery, eating disorders, or treatment, there are lots of opportunities that we offer that Natalie was describing to you. For an individualized conversation, you can reach out for a free confidential discovery consultation call. I'll put the link to that in the chat. And also be sure to keep an eye out for our emails. We have lots of exciting announcements, free resources, and lots of other stuff that goes out in those emails. We have a free Contemplating Recovery support group. Our next one will be on Saturday, November 5th at 11 a.m. with Melainie again. So you get more of her wonderful support. And then there's another one on Friday, November 11th at 12 p.m. with Balance's clinical director, Beck. And finally, you can always call us directly at 212-645-6903. And I will put all that information in the chat as well. Thank you again for joining us today, for taking the time and dedicating this hour with us to think about recovery or treatment, or even just learn more about fear foods. I hope you have a wonderful day and a happy Halloween. And thanks again, Mel, for your amazing presentation.